All right. We're just going to talk about oscillations today. And to start, we're just going to go through the definition of simple harmonic motion, prove some properties about it, and then do an example of testing whether something is simple harmonic or not. So, simple harmonic motion has these defining properties, and any of which are satisfactory on their own to show something is simple harmonic. So, first, there's a quadratic potential energy function associated with the motion. So that's our first condition. So what that means is that your function u of x is equal to some constant times x squared. So if we're graphing potential energy as a function of x, we should be getting some sort of a parabola. Second property, uh, there is a restoring force linearly proportional to displacement that's going to send you back to the equilibrium position. So this would be force is equal to some negative constant times your displacement from zero. And what this one looks like is just our graph, meaning that, well, if you're at zero, there's no restoring force. But if you move out in the positive direction, there should be a force acting in the negative direction to send you back to zero. If you're in the negative direction, there should be a force in the positive direction to send you back to zero. So you're always having a force trying to send you back to this equilibrium position. Property 3. Here's the differential equation definition. So if we want to think about this in just our linear kinematics variables, this just says that the acceleration is equal to some negative number times the position, because acceleration is two derivatives of displacement. So sometimes this number will not be very nice looking, but if you just have a negative number in front of an x equal to your second derivative, well, that's your simple harmonic. And the fourth property, if you're just explicitly given that the position time function of whatever variable you're looking at is some sort of sine or cosine function that doesn't depend on amplitude inside, so something like this is the general form of that, well, it's simple harmonic. And notice there's no amplitude thing happening inside of the cosine. So no matter how big A is for this function, it's not going to affect the period of oscillation, which is affected by this frequency term omega, which is a constant. So our main problem today is just going to be proving that all of the above properties are equivalent. So in math, when we're trying to prove a set of things are equivalent, we have to form a closed cycle of proving properties from each other. So how we'll set this up, and the reason I ordered the definitions this way, is if we organize our properties sort of on a clock like this, we can prove that these are equivalent if we can form a closed cycle. So if I can prove that 1 implies 2, 2 implies 3, 3 implies 4, and 4 implies 1, then I've completed a chain that goes all the way around and proves all these properties are the same. You can't just prove the 4 from each other, they have to form a closed cycle like this. So we're just going to go clockwise, because I think that might be the most straightforward way of doing this, although you could prove it starting from any of the others. So first, let's show that 1 implies 2. And as a refresher, we're trying to show that 1, which is ux is quadratic, is implying that that force is negative and linear proportional to the displacement. So we're starting with the fact that we have a quadratic potential energy function. So assume we've encountered some motion and it has a potential energy function that looks like this. Well, we know that by definition, force can be calculated from potential energy just by taking a derivative and attaching a minus sign. And unsurprisingly, when we just use the power rule on this, we get a negative and then a 2c times x, which is equal to negative a constant times x. And that's exactly what we wanted to show. So that's done. Makes sense. If we have a quadratic function as our u, a derivative of that is linear, and we pick up the minus sign. Next, we'll show that the force condition implies the differential equation condition. So we're given that force is equal to some negative constant times the displacement. Well, also we're assuming this is the net force on our system, so F net is just equal to MA. So MA is equal to negative C times X. Or, dividing both sides by M, we get A is equal to negative C divided by M times X. And then we can just do another simplification, and we can call this C over M another number, or another constant. We'll just call it like C2. And it fits. It fits our differential equation because we have two time derivatives of the position function is equal to a negative times some number, which we call omega squared, times x. And we just call that C2 omega squared so that we have to force this term in front to be negative. So if this C2 was a negative, your double negatives would cancel out, and that's not simple harmonic motion. You have to have a negative sign in front to make this differential equation negative. All right, and then we're going to prove that 3 implies 4, which says that if this is your differential equation, so we have this differential equation right here. So d squared x dt squared is equal to negative omega squared times x. We want to show that a sine curve actually satisfies this. So we want to show that x of t equals a times cosine of omega t plus phi. And this is a very easy thing to do with differential equations because we have the answer. The hard part is finding it. Well, we're saying here's a candidate that solves this differential equation. Does it work? Let's see. So let's take two derivatives of our proposed solution. So again, it's like the same thing where if you have something that's allegedly the antiderivative of something, you can check your answer just by differentiating. So if we take one derivative of this thing, well, the derivative of cosine is negative sine, so we pick up a minus. But then also we have to use the chain rule because there's an omega attached to the t. And then applying another derivative, well, we're back to cosine. The sine hasn't flipped at all. But then we also get another factor of omega because we had to chain rule again. So therefore, we're just going to get negative omega squared times a cosine omega t plus phi, which is equal to negative omega squared x. So that's that. And then lastly, we're just going to complete the cycle by showing that that condition implies the first one. So if we have x is equal to a cosine of omega t plus phi, we're trying to show that this implies the potential energy function condition. So we're going to do this in a roundabout way where we're just going to show that we can get the force we're expecting from this and thus get the energy. So force is our connection to energy, and force is related to acceleration. So if we take two derivatives, we get that the acceleration of the particle is equal to negative omega squared times x. I didn't assume that, but you can pretty easily show that that's exactly what we did in the last part. So I didn't assume this was true. So just starting from condition 4, I proved this. Okay, then multiplying both sides by m, we get ma is equal to negative m omega squared x. But ma is equal to f. So I get f, the force, as a function of x, is equal to some constant with a negative sign attached. So we're just going to call it negative cx. But since force is equal to negative du dx, that means that u is equal to the negative integral of the force. And, well, the antiderivative of cx with a negative is just going to be 1/2 cx squared, which, if you notice, is quadratic. So now we've done it. We've proven all the cycle. So again, what we did is, if our potential energy function is quadratic, that means our force is linear with a negative attached. If our force is a restoring force linear to displacement, we showed that that implies that we get the Newton's second law equation in differential form that looks like this. Then we just showed that a cosine curve actually satisfies this differential equation. And we showed that from a cosine curve, you could show that it does generate this quadratic potential energy. So that's a good exercise in understanding all these things are saying the same thing. All right, now we're going to apply these conditions and see if we can actually prove if a set of motion is simple harmonic or not. So a particle of mass m is placed at an initial distance of x0 along an axis perpendicular to the center of a ring of mass m and radius r. So we've looked at this problem with gravitation, and what ends up happening is as you get farther out, you get more contributions from farther portions of the ring. So we actually get a gravitational field or gravitational force that's actually maximum the farther out you get, because there's more of the ring when you're along the axis like this. So the force vectors are going to look like this, where it's actually 0 in the middle. So we have this. So we can see there's some sort of restoring force idea happening here. Because if I think about this as a vector field, if I release mass m from rest, it's going to accelerate, go faster, faster, faster. There is no force at the center of the ring, but it's going so fast that it's not going to instantly stop until it gets slowed down by the vectors on the left, and the cycle is going to repeat forever. So, describe the motion of the particle. Well, it's just gonna oscillate between x equals x naught and x equals minus x naught. So it's just going to keep going back and forth. What is the amplitude of oscillations? Well, it's just going to be x naught. That's just saying how far away from displacement does it get from its equilibrium position? Well, it's x naught. because the farthest out it can be in either direction is that distance x naught. Suppose the force of the particle is given by this lovely expression. Is this motion simple harmonic? So to do this, realize we have 4 conditions to check, and they all should work. So we're given the force, so it definitely seems easiest to look at the force condition. So we have that SHM occurs if and only if force is equal to a negative number times the displacement. And this stuff is all constant up here, and so is this r. So we're just basically going to see what the dependence is on x here. Well, we have that force is proportional to negative, not just x, but this other term on the denominator. So it's not going to be simple harmonic because this term in the denominator is not just an x. It does not just leave us with an x. So if this was gone on the denominator, then it would be simple harmonic. But it's not. So f is proportional to that, not minus x. So this is not simple harmonic motion. So a trap that we can fall into is thinking that just because it oscillates, it's simple harmonic. That's not true. Simple harmonic is just a very special case. It's just a very special case of periodic motion. So if we draw ourselves a little Venn diagram here, periodic motion would go up here, and SHM is a very special case of periodic motion. It's like the rectangle and the square. So periodic motion just means the motion is repeating at a set frequency, but SHM, this must mean that the 4 conditions are met. So if it has one of the 4 properties, then it fits into the special bubble of simple harmonic. So this is an example of something that potentially looks like it could be simple harmonic because it's just something going back and forth at a set rate. But it's actually not, because we have this dependency on this sort of Pythagorean theorem term in the denominator. All right. Next, we're actually going to go on to some examples that are simple harmonic.